Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. Happy Friday. I have another book review for you if you want to call it a book review. It's really a comic book, graphic novel, couple of anthology story adaptations. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking about the Goosebumps Graphix series. Now, I have not read book one still. I have not read Slappy's Tales of Terror, which are still kind of a Goosebumps Graphix type thing. I think that was the fourth of that series at one point. By the way, I look like a slob. I don't care. It's early in the morning. I just wanted to wake up and get the review done, have something nice for you guys on a Friday morning, aside from the video I posted last night for the TV book of Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. Now, of course, this particular book, the third one of the series, is called Goosebumps Graphix, Volume 3, Scary Summer, or just Goosebumps Graphix. And yeah, one of the stories in here is Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. It's the first story in the actual book. It's adapted by Dean Haspiel, which I've looked at the three artists who adapted the three different books in this book, and I don't know any of the three of them, at least from the previous book, which is book number 2, volume 2, whatever you want to call that last Goosebumps Graphix book. That particular one had, like, the girl who did Scary Godmother, which is something I loved when I was a kid. It was a TV show at one point. Loved it, absolutely adored it when I was a kid, from Cartoon Network, I believe is what it was. There was a lot of people I recognized doing that last book, and there was only one story in there I didn't like. It was Deep Trouble, because the art was horrifically cartoonish, and it just was bad. This book has the same exact problem, and I'm so upset about that, because it was such a... It's a shame of what story that happened to, and I'll get into that more and more. But this book adapts Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes, Ghost Beach, which is one of my favorite stories, whether it be the original novel, whether it be the TV book. Well, I haven't read the TV book, actually, but I've seen the episode 1,000 times. I love the episode so much. And the Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. And the Horror at Camp Jelly Jam is the one that gets the slaughter here. I mean, they completely butchered Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. I mean, it's almost unrecognizable, and it's almost so sad to see it this bad. I'm just ashamed for it, because it's not even one of my favorite books of the old series. It's a good one. It's a really good one, as a matter of fact. But their adaptation here to comic form is horrendous. Now, let me start off. Like I said, the first adaptation here is Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes, done by Dean Haspiel. I think he did a fantastic job. I really, really liked this. To kind of give you an idea of what the art looks like, kind of looks more like this. I want to try to give you a little bit of a sample of this. That is Moose. It's probably the wrong picture to show. That's Moose, and the main character, I think his name is... I don't know his name. Forgot all that. I think it's Joe, I believe. It doesn't matter with Goosebumps characters. Side characters' names can sometimes stick with me. A lot of the main characters' names don't, unless it's particular, like Harley Beth, who is extremely memorable. But even so, Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes, very well adapted. I like the art style for the most part. It was a little on the cartoony side, but it was fine for what it is, because that story is very silly, very goofy in general. It works for Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. It's not too cartoony, but it worked extremely well for what they were doing here. For anybody who doesn't know what the story is about, I'll kind of give you a general I'll try to make it quick rundown of the stories themselves. Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes is about two kids, a brother and sister. The sister is older, and they have a dad who essentially loves to collect lawn ornaments. And he's also part of this competition for, like, gardening stuff. And his next door neighbor, Mr. McCall, who is also, he has a son named Moose, who is the best friend of the main character. They also are part of this competition for the neighborhood about growing a really good garden with certain melons and whatnot that he's doing. And apparently the dad, and the main character's dad, he actually buys a couple of lawn gnomes for his yard from the store that they love down the street called Lawn Lovely. And the two gnomes they buy, they nickname Hap and Chip. One because he looks really happy, one because he has a chip in his tooth. And the gnomes potentially are coming to life and wrecking all kinds of stuff. I meant wreaking all kinds of havoc all over people's yards, whether it be the main character's yard or Mr. McCall's next door at Moose's house. And it's just kind of an insane, fun, Night of the Living Dummy type of story, and it really works in my opinion. I dig it really well. I think it's a really solid, fun little book. And this adaptation is very faithful, specifically to the original novel. These are not based on the TV episodes to try to make these stories a little bit shorter. They're about 40 to 50 pages per of each of these three stories that are adapted here. So they have a lot of time to work with a lot of the stuff. They really don't have to cut out a whole lot of material to make these 120 or so page long books fit into this 40 or 50 page selection area, whatever you want to call it. They might do a little bit better at 60 pages, maybe just have a little bit more wiggle room, but for 50 or so pages, they do extremely well, especially with Dean Haspiel here with Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. I think he did a very, very good job, and I do want to, give him a little acclaim for that. He deserves it. Very good. The second story in here, Ghost Beach, was adapted by Ted Naifeh. Naifeh? I don't know. Naifeh. He did a fantastic job with the art, with the adaptation. This dude absolutely killed it. The art is amazing for Ghost Beach. I'm going to show you a couple of little examples of that. It has kind of this almost manga type anime looking type thing going for it, and I really dig it. I'll show you. Yeah, let's show you that one. I really, really, really dig this one. I think that anime manga style, I love comic books in general, so I read a lot of comic books, and the fact that this was more of an anime manga style kind of threw me off at first, but it works really well for the story. Of course, Ghost Beach, a lot of people consider it one of the worst Goosebumps books, one of the worst Goosebumps episodes. I do not. I love it. Basically about two kids going to visit their very elderly cousins at nearby a beach, and they meet a couple of kids out there, and the kids talk about this like cave up on top of the mountain that actually has like a big like light coming out of it sometimes, and they think there's a ghost up there that actually haunts it by the beach. And so they kind of just have this situation dealing with this ghost up on the beach, and I really dig it. I love the story. I think it's a very spooky story, especially the original novel, and I think this particular graphic novel adaptation of that old novel is so respectful, and it really loves that source material. It works so well, and it just looks great. I love the look of the ghost. I think it looks really cool. It has such a great, I don't really know how to explain it. It's very respectful to the original source material. It's easily my favorite adaptation of the entire book so far. It might possibly be my potential favorite out of the two graphics books I've read so far. But the last one had like One Day at Horrorland, and it also had Shocker on Shock Street, which are two of my favorite stories of all time from Goosebumps. So I don't know, maybe I'm not thinking of it correctly, because I remember really loving Shocker on Shock Street and One Day at Horrorland. But this one was really good too. The Ghost Beach adaptation here was really solid. I did not think, when I first started buying these graphics collections, that they would ever adapt Ghost Beach into this, because I just feel like people hate it so much for whatever reason. But I'm glad that they reprinted that as the newer reissues since 2015, because people are starting to get a little bit of respect, at least younger readers kind of are. Ghost Beach gets hated on so much, and I hate that for it, and the art is so good here and really makes up and makes it even better. If you have a younger reader who doesn't like to read just straight up books, again, I think Goosebumps will get anybody into reading. I really do, because it's well done, it's fun, it's extremely fast paced, it's not rushed a lot of the time. There's a couple of books I've read that have felt kind of rushed in the finale, but most of these books are paced extremely well. If you have a younger reader, maybe like 5 or 6, that's trying to get into reading, or you're trying to get them into reading, if it's a kid of yours or a niece or a nephew, you could start them with this book, or one of these Goosebumps Graphix books. They might really dig this. It's not too scary, but it does really well at capturing the atmosphere, especially with things like Ghost Beach, and again, in the previous book you had things like Shocker on Shock Street, One Day at Horrorland. They really, really nailed down how those stories feel in the original novels, and it might even introduce your kid into reading. Comic books are a great place to get kids into reading, at least the ones that are appropriate for younger readers. But I really dig it. I highly recommend what Ted Naifeh, whatever his name is, did with Ghost Beach. It was fantastic. But the last one in here, Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. It was adapted by Kyle Baker. Again, I don't know who this fellow is either. I'm kind of sad that I don't know the artists / adapters here. Kyle Baker may have done this is probably worse than Deep Trouble, the adaptation that was done in the previous book for that. The Horror at Camp Jelly Jam was completely butchered. I mean, this story, there's not a whole lot to that book. It's a very good book. I really dig the original novel from R.L. Stine. There's not a whole lot to it. It's not like it's filled with constant, like, just you have to bog it down with a lot of information or anything. It's really not. A lot of Goosebumps books are very direct and very simple, and that's what makes them fun. This adaptation is so rushed, to the point where I swear I think there's certain panels missing, or at least there are panels that should be there that don't even match up with the words. It is an absolute sloppy mess. It is as bad as the Deep Trouble adaptation in the previous book. I mean, it's a shame, frankly, in my opinion, because this had so much potential. It had so much potential, and I was so excited to see Horror at Camp Jelly Jam get adapted. And when I started kind of glancing through the book to see the art styles of the 3 different books adapted, I saw what really, really, really immediately turned me off from this book. It has that like Steamboat Willie newspaper cartoon comic type art style, and it is absolutely awful. And some of these panels get to the point that they are so bland. Like, look at this art, dude. Like, how could you possibly defend this? And this is Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. That is probably one of the most respectable Goosebumps books that has ever been written. A lot of people adore that and put it in like their top 5. The fact that Kyle Baker's art, it's not that the art is bad, it's that this art style does not suit Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, or anything Goosebumps for that matter. Maybe he could have done better with like Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes, as silly and kind of goofy as that story is. But he didn't need to be touching Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. This dude's art style, it's bad. I don't like that style for anything Goosebumps, because this is a great example. If you want to see what I was talking about in my previous videos with the announcement of the new Goosebumps TV show in 2021 or whenever it's coming out, if you want a fantastic example of why anything Goosebumps should never be just straight up cartoon animation like the Tales from the Crypt Keeper show, for the Tales from the Crypt Keeper, like the cartoon Tales from the Crypt show, if you want a fantastic example of why that should never happen, and why they should never ever make an animated cartoon, aside from stop motion animation, of Goosebumps, that is the best testament to that, because it is too goofy, it's too silly. You have situations where, for example, the two boys, well, the boy and girl, the brother and sister, they decide to get in the back, when they're on vacation with their parents, they decide to get in the back of the trailer that's attached to their car, and the truck breaks off, and the trailer goes down a hill and everything. And it's so cartoonish that you even have a cow that the characters saw, like, freak out like it was in a cartoon, like a real straight-up animated cartoon, freaking out and running away. Whereas in the real story, I don't think there was any mention of a cow, as far as I know, unless they said, like, hey, there's a cow, and that's all that was ever said. But it's so cartoonish, man, and it just, that art style is horrible with this. It doesn't work well at all. Again, the art is not badly done. It doesn't work for this. It's too goofy, and it's too over the top, frankly. It's a missed opportunity. It's one of the biggest, horrifically bad ideas that Goosebumps has ever had, to put that art style with that story, of all things, you know? And of course, the rest of the story for Horror at Camp Jelly Jam is that the brother and sister get stuck at a camp with a guy named Buddy, and Buddy has them kind of just play the sports and whatnot. Of course, there's the slogan for the actual camp that says, "Only the best." And you have to try your absolute best when you play these sports, and if you win each of these games that you play, you actually get a token. It's called a King Coin. And if you get 6 of those, you get to go through the Winner's Walk, which kind of takes you on this certain path to a place, and the kids start going missing, right? That do the Winner's Walk, that have won 6 of those tokens. And the main character girl tries to figure out what happened with those characters that are going missing. And it is just such a sloppy execution of that really solid, fun story that I think a lot of us love. I really do. I think a lot of us love. I never read the book when I was growing up. I read it as an adult for the first time last year during the summer. And I adored it. I thought it was a very, very, really solid, good story. It was enjoyable. The ending was wild. The execution of the finale, which a lot of people who have read that book know how kind of silly and goofy that finale is. Anybody who has read that book, they know how that ending should have been handled. They know how that ending should have been handled. And this book flies through that ending, the solution, if you will, in probably like 2 panels. Now, when I say 2 panels, that is not 2 pages. We're talking like 2 panels of like a page that they're pretty much done and over with. It is so oddly paced, and awfully paced for that matter. This is probably one of the worst Goosebumps adaptations to anything, whether it be to a TV episode, whether it be to a comic or anything. This is such a sloppy, badly put together version of Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, and it breaks my heart, honestly, because I really, really enjoyed that book, like I said. Overall, I really, really liked Volume 3 of Goosebumps Graphix, called Scary Summer. This is really good. I really recommend it mainly off of Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes, which is really good, and I also recommend it because of Ghost Beach and how great the art was there. But Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, again, just like with Deep Trouble in Volume 2 or Book 2 of the Goosebumps Graphix series, it really drags down what you had with the other two stories in here. And I'm assuming all three of the books are going to be like this. I'm assuming when I read the first book out of all of these, I forgot what it is. I think it's like maybe Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, maybe Fever Swamp, I think, and also Pasadena, I think are the three stories in there. I'm hoping that I'll be wrong and that won't be torn down into a mess too with one or two of the stories being horrible or anything. But again, everything else was paced well outside of Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. This is really, for the most part, a good, solid read. And again, I think younger readers would really dig this. The problem is that it can spoil the original novel and the TV episodes and stuff for you if you haven't already watched those, read those, or anything. So I recommend reading the original novels like I'm doing first, and then come into this and seeing the execution, seeing what's missing and whatnot. There's not a whole lot missing from Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes and Ghost Beach. There's a ton missing from Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, because it's rushed to death. That art style, again, doesn't work. But anyway, when it comes to Goosebumps Graphix Book 3, Volume 3, or just, if you want to call it just Goosebumps Graphix 3, Scary Summer, if I had to rate this on a 5-star basis, I'd easily give it a really high 4 out of 5 stars. I think it works very well until you get to Horror at Camp Jelly Jam, which I'm glad at least that's the last story in the book, because at least you went through two fantastic stories and ended kind of on a bittersweet note with the book overall. But the first two stories, fantastic. Really recommend it alone on just those. These Goosebumps Graphix books are really cool, by the way. They're in black and white for the art, so it's not in color where they have to jump the price to like $25, which I kind of like. I'd prefer to have it in color, but I could take the black and white art style. I kind of dig that, especially if there was more sketch art for these. I would like to see a Goosebumps Graphix 4 at some point, outside of Tales of Slappy, or whatever it was called. But I like these graphic novel adaptations, and I kind of want to do like a video at some point talking about what I want for a Goosebumps Graphix 4 or 5. They'll probably never make it because these stopped being released in like I think 2012 or 11, somewhere in there. They didn't make many of these. But even so, what are your thoughts on Goosebumps Graphix books? What are your thoughts on this particular volume of those books? Do you love it? Do you hate it? What is your favorite story in this particular adaptation anthology? What is your worst? What do you think about what happened to Camp Jelly Jam in this book? I'd love to hear everything you have to say down below, guys. Again, happy Friday. Thank you for watching and being so faithful to the channel. I couldn't possibly explain to you how appreciative I am of that. Thank you for hearing me ramble all the time and talk about nonsense all the time. And may the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today. Have a safe weekend, and goodbye.